All right, family. In this video, will probably be one of the most important videos I record. In this video, I'm going to teach you that the most important business, the most profitable business, the most legacy generational wealth business you'll ever start is your family. Let's jump right into the training, y'all. So here recently, I had the opportunity to participate in a conference, and it just wasn't your normal conference. This was different. This conference was titled "The Business of Relationship," and where the conference came from. A good friend of mine, me and Mike Bell, were having a conversation about relationships one day, and I went on to kind of share with him how I look at relationships in the form of a business model, right? So when you think about a business model, you're going to have when you look at your corporate structure, you're going to have your CEO, you're going to have your chief executive officer, you're going to have your COO, your chief operating officer, and you're going to have your CFO, your chief financial officer, and then you're going to have your employees. So I went on to share that, hey, this is how we have set up our family structure. And what Mike did, he took that idea and he turned it into something phenomenal. So if you haven't connected with my good friend Mike Bell, you can find him on my social media, especially if you're local to the Columbus, Ohio area. But nonetheless, I was asked to come in and speak on the financial portion of this business of relationship. And I got an opportunity to really share and pour into some really, really phenomenal people here. And I'm just going to kind of go through some of my notes. I think that just be the best way to really bring you up to speed on the things that I shared. Okay, so if I look at my notes here and I look at the presentation that I did here, let me pull it up here and look at my notes. All right, let's get right here into this thing, y'all. Perfect. Okay. So this whole conversation came from a conversation between two brothers, and the question was asked: if your home was audited today, right, in the form of a business audit, if your home was a stock that was traded publicly on the stock market, would this be a business that would pass the audit? Would this be a business that other people would want to invest into? Would this be a stock that people would be just lining up to go buy more of this stock? If your family, if they could lift up the hood and see how your family was ran, see how your family is educated, see the profitability of your family, the debt of your family, the assets of your family, the cash flow generating assets of your family. If your stuff was 100% public, would this be something that other people would be wanting to invest in, or would this be something that people would run away from? So let that sink in for a second and just have that transparent moment with yourself. If that were the case, where people say, man, this is a growth company, man, I want to invest in this. I can see this going major places. I can see this being around for centuries. Or would they look at your situation, your household situation, and say, run from that like the plague, right? Start to think about your household like that, because here's the deal: if your home was audited, would it pass the audit? Would it pass the test? Is this something that other people would want to duplicate? Right. So when you start to think along those lines, it kind of comes down to this piece, right? If you look at a business, one of the first things you look at the business, right, other than like the financials, is you look at the CEO. Who is the CEO of the business? Who is providing the vision for the business? And then, you might get into the weeds and be like, well, who's the COO? Who's the chief operating officer? Who is managing the day to day? Who is implementing the ideas from the CEO and make sure that the business is running? A very, very important position. And then you just have your CFO, your chief financial officer. Would you invest in a business that didn't have a CFO, a chief financial officer? Right? Let that sink in for a second. If you were analyzing a stock, if you are analyzing a business, I do this all the time when people bring to me startup companies and things of that nature, right? They're sharing their vision, they're sharing their mission, sharing who they're going to serve. But always see a gap. I said, well, who's the CFO here? Well, we don't have one. So who's making the financial decisions? Who is course correcting? Who is telling you when to turn right when you should turn, you know what I'm saying? Who is telling you to turn right when you're turning left? Who is telling you to, double down on this particular strategy because it's driving profit? Who is managing the cash flow? Let that sink in for a second. Would you invest in a business that did not have a CFO? Would you invest in a business where the CEO could not tell you the vision of the company? Would you invest in a company that have no operating officer? So the CEO has this vision of, hey, we want to take the company all global, all over the world. Well, how are you doing it? Well, it's a good idea, but we have nobody to help implement it, right? So no, you wouldn't. Well, hopefully you wouldn't, because that would be a bad investment. Well, unfortunately, that's how most families are run. There's no CEO. There's no one person who is outlining and highlighting the vision of where the family is supposed to go. Typically, you may run into a situation where you have two CEOs. Have you ever heard of a business that has two CEOs? No, it's not very common. You know why? Because you can't have two chefs in the kitchen, right? You got to have one person who's laying out the vision, and then you have another person who is very, very gifted at implementing that vision and very gifted at execution, right? And then you have your CFO who's helping manage the cash flow and the finances. And their job is to say, hey, this is your vision. This is where you're trying to go. This is how you're executing on that vision. And as a result of that, these are the finances, and these finances go in these different buckets. This is how we reduce our taxes. This is how we pay for vacation. This is how we, create become work optional with passive income. This is how we buy real estate, right? This is how we start a business. This is how we go buy another business, right? You have to have those components for a successful business. Why wouldn't you have those same components for a successful household? Super important. Super important. Something I do did with this group as soon as I walked in, it's like, hey, who all in here owns a business, right? Maybe half the room put their hands up. I said, okay, everybody put their hands down. Who all in here is part of a family? Everybody's hand went up. I said, well, if you're part of a family, then effectively you're part of a business. The question is that business failing or is that business succeeding? Question is that a growth stock that we can see the growth opportunity that is going to go on and provide for multiple generations? Or is this a crumbling, failing stock that we need to sell? Let that be your litmus test to where your family is right now. So let me just go on into some other stuff because these are the things that I shared in here, right? And what I also shared was in order, so if we now are looking at our household as a business, then we have to start to think like a business. And this is what we share in our 5 day challenge, our 5 day Think Like a Bank challenge, our financial freedom boot camp is, hey, you have to start to shift your identity. So not just shift your identity with your personal finances, right? But shift your identity as a family. Start to become the lender, not the borrower. Start to become the producer, not the consumer, right? Are y'all connecting the dots on this? Y'all feeling this, right? So here's the deal. As we start to kind of go through this, I went through sharing, what we teach in our 5 day challenge, how to think like the bank, right? Banks don't hustle. Banks use leverage. Banks don't clock in. They collect. Banks don't save. They own. If we want to lead our homes and create wealth and leave a legacy, we can't just work harder. We have to start to think differently. You are no longer a consumer. You are a provider. You are a producer. You have to become a wealth architect. You have to start thinking like the bank family. Is this getting clear to you guys, right? How important this is? Why we have put all our chips into our challenge and educating families and individuals and organizations on how to start to think like the bank, because this is the only way you're going to create wealth. Okay. Now, let's break this wealth down because I had to give this definition just to level set. I have grown to dislike, to have a disdain for the phrase generational wealth. Not because I don't believe in it, but because it is used incorrectly all the time. So let's level set here and let me give you my definition of wealth. And granted, you talk to different people, they're going to have different definitions of wealth, but understand this: in your household, you, CEO, which is usually the husband, you, COO, chief operating officer, which is usually the wife. And maybe those roles, I'm saying, could potentially flip-flop, but typically the CEO is the husband, the COO is the wife, right? And the children are the employees, right? But here's the deal: if we're going to create generational wealth, there has to be an alignment, there has to be a agreement of what you think wealth is. If you, the CEO, the COO, and the CFO are in misalignment about what wealth is, how in the world are you going to drive the numbers in order to reach the goal? It is utterly impossible. Where there's a misalignment, there's confusion. Where there's confusion, there's conflict. Where there's conflict, you have breakup. Dude, a lot of families break up because of this. I haven't seen the stats here recently, but I know I used to look at these stats in the past, and it was like, hey, the number one reason for divorce wasn't infidelity. Number one reason for divorce was financial matters. So you have to get alignment on this. All right, so let me go into my definition of wealth. Okay. And I'm going to attempt here to share my whiteboard, possibly because I'm on a new system here. Y'all bear with me here 1 second. See if I can pull up this whiteboard situation, because I want to make sure that you guys see this. I just don't need you to hear this. I need you to also see this, because I want to make sure that you hear my voice, you feel what I'm saying, but most importantly, it got to make sure that it really registers here with you. So let me attempt to share this new dry erase board. Let me go here to my share screen. Share screen. Okay. Okay, perfect. I'm sharing my screen here. So when we talk about this word wealth, you first have to define it, and then you have to determine how you will measure it. So this is my definition of wealth. Wealth is not a dollar amount. Wealth is a system. Okay? System. And what I love about systems is that systems allow ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results. Let me say that again. Systems allow ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results. You ain't got to be the smartest. You ain't got to be the smartest. You ain't got to be the sharpest knife in the drawer. But if you can follow a proven system, you increase your likelihood and chances to win by probably 10x versus you just trying to wing it and figure it out on your own. That's why I love systems. That's why we created our wealthy framework, because it's a system that people can plug into. All right, so let me share this here with you real quick here. So the system has three components. Wealth is a system that creates three things. The first thing it creates is security. And what I mean by security, I mean safety. If you were to sit down and have a transparent conversation with your spouse, with your children, the only question I would want you to ask them is, do you feel safe financially? Right? Safe financially means like, hey, I'm not worried about money. I'm not anxious about money. I'm not worried about whether or not we're going to be able to pay the light bills, whether we're going to keep the mortgage, whether we have too much debt and we got to file bankruptcy, right? Security is safety. But more importantly, security is peace of mind. Do you have peace of mind, or are you stressing about your finances? That's the first thing. That's what wealth does. It's a system that creates security. The next thing that it creates is going to be time freedom. Time freedom. Let me write that in here real quick. Time freedom. And when I say time freedom, when you have a wealth system running in place, you have more time to do the things that you want to do. You own your day. You own your calendar. You're not required to go someplace that you don't want to go try to make money, right? We think about that time freedom piece as being, and we talk about that as far as being work optional. Being work optional is not having to go to work to have to make money, that you'll have money coming in from other places. So if you choose to go to work, it's because that was your option. You opted to go to work, not that you have to go to work. So do you control 100% of your calendar? Or does somebody else control your calendar? Because if somebody else controls your calendar, that means that you don't have wealth, right? You have a time constraint. Somebody else is telling you when to show up, when to take vacation, when you can take your kids when you can take your kids to the hospital or to the doctor, or how much time you have available when your spouse has a kid, and how much time do you have off of work, right? Time freedom. That's when you know you have a wealth system. Third is abundance. And what I shared with the group when I broke down abundance is like, hey, this is what abundance is. Yes, we hear the word abundance and our minds may immediately go to, at least my mind does go to, like, roads of, silver and gold, and, milk and honey and all of these things, right? It's they kind of that glamorized version of abundance. But what abundance simply is this, is way more simpler than, roads of, silver and gold. It's simply this. Do you have enough financially to cover all of your expenses without going into debt? Cover all your expenses without going into debt, and have extra to give somebody else. That's abundance. I have enough for us. It's kind of like, think about, food. Man, we have enough food in our freezer, in our refrigerator, for us to eat for the next month. And we got some extra that if somebody else is hungry, I can give them some as well without cutting into mine. That's abundance, right? So wealth is a system that creates security slash peace of mind, time freedom, you control your calendar, and also to abundance, enough to take care of our stuff sufficiently, and while still having extra to be a blessing to somebody else, right? That's what wealth is. Wealth is a system. And if your system is not providing those three things, then you don't have wealth. In order to have wealth, you have to have peace of mind, time freedom, and enough to share. Right. So as we're starting to think about our families, right? We're starting to think about our families, and hey, we want to create this generational wealth. What generational wealth is a generational system. Are you teaching your kids how to have peace of mind around their money and not be anxious and frightened and terrified and losing sleep at night? Are we teaching our kids that the most important asset you have is your time, and not to give that away, because that's the one thing that you can't get back? Are we teaching our kids that? Are we teaching our kids to put themselves in position that they can leverage their time, that they can get the most out of their time, that when their time is spent, it produces a tangible result, right? Are we teaching that? Right? That's a system. Are we teaching abundance? Are we teaching, hey, we are blessed to be where we are right now, and because we are blessed, we can actually be a blessing to others? That is wealth. And if you're thinking about your business, or should I say your household, creating wealth, generational wealth is, are you teaching and learning the system, right? Teaching and learn. Are you teaching the system to help your employees get peace of mind, time freedom or abundance? Or are you passing out a system saying, hey, you got to work 40 years and hopefully and prayerfully be able to, right? That's not what the banks do. The banks have a system. Hey, our system is to increase cash flow, is to drive profitability, is to use leverage other people's money and resources to go out and acquire things that are going to grow and increase our wealth, increase our net worth and our cash flow and reduce our taxes. What system are you teaching your family? That's why it's so important. That's why it's so important, family, for you just really understand that your household is the most important business that you will ever be a part of. And if the purpose of your household, of the mission of your household, right? Ooh, let's pause right there. Do you have a mission? Right? Do you have a mission that you can articulate that you're and do you have core values of your household? Do you have a mission? We have core values for our household. You know what I'm saying? It breaks down the acronym champions, right? Does your family have core values that people can recite? Does your family have a mission? Hey, our mission is to dot 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 dot. Your business should have core values. Your business should have a mission that you articulate to your customers and potential customers. How about your family? What is your family mission? What are your family core values? Whoo, Lord, let's keep it going, y'all. So as I went on to kind of break these things down, right, and kind of just really like, hey, again, going back to that idea, if your family was a stock, if your family, if the, in my case, if the Jeffries family, the Jeffries household was a stock that was publicly traded on the stock market, and my finances were public knowledge that anybody could lift up the hood, go online and see my finances, would it be something I would be proud to show? Would you be? If you're not, that means we got work to do, family. Okay. All right. Let me look here at the rest of my notes because I just want to make sure that I get through this piece with you real quick. Let's talk about alignment. You have to have alignment in a business. And in a business, you have to have alignment from the top down. The employees need to know the core values and the mission of the company, all the way up to the C-suite executives, the CEO, COO, the CFO. You have to have alignment. So if there's a misalignment and roles are not clear, then you're going to lose momentum. And what you want to build is momentum, right? So in your household, if you're a man listening to this and you're the CEO, or you're a woman listening to this and you're the household COO, the whole thing could break down if you are misaligned in your goals and your values and just everything. Actually, you're misaligning if your six F's don't align. Y'all maybe heard me, teach on the six F's: faith, family, friends, fitness, fun, finance. You have to have alignment, y'all. So, anyway, as I was brought into this conference to talk about the finances, if you're misaligned on how the finances should be ran, then this is the time for you to get somebody to help you get in alignment, right? You need that third party to come and say, no, this is the vision, this is the operations, and these are the finances, and this is the direction based upon what you said your vision is. This is how the finances need to be managed. And based upon your the vision, this is how the business is being ran or the family is being ran, and this is how that is impacting the numbers. And that means we need to change some things about how the business is being ran, because all of that is having an impact on the bottom line. Are y'all following this? Is this making sense to y'all? Oh my gosh. I'd love to jump in these comments real quick and just see if anybody is picking up what I'm laying down right now. But I'm gonna get through this presentation. Let me get through this bad boy. Let me get through this bad boy. Okay. So we broke that down that way. And then I got blessed after I was finished up, took some Q&A to listen to this brother Purcell Gaskins, former NFL player, just phenomenal cat. We had been on some conference calls together, but this was our first time engaging with each other. So he got up, he came up and spoke after me. Here's his book right here, right? 21st Century Innovations, Systemic Solutions for Systemic Problems, The Awakening of the Solutionist Within. And I sat down and I listened to his presentation, and it touched my soul. Just completely just, it was that word that I needed to hear for my business. So I'm going to share. Was no way I'll be able to duplicate or repeat what he shared with us because he just truly, truly blessed us. But I am going to share, this takeaway that I have. So I play chess. I actually, I was the sixth grade chess champion, but I was in the fifth grade. I'd be the sixth grader. So yeah, that's a whole thing. But that was in the past, almost 50 years. So nonetheless, I played chess. Taught my daughters to play chess. So we play chess, and he used this analogy of the board being the kingdom, and he asked this question right out the gate. He said, "What's the most important piece on the chessboard?" Right? And a lot of people said the queen, right? And when I sat there when he asked that question, I was like, he said the most important piece on the chessboard, and I didn't answer because I kind of felt where he was going. He said, well, the queen is the most powerful piece on the chessboard, the COO, but the most important piece on the chessboard is the king. Why is the king the most important piece on the chessboard? Because when your king is taken, the game is over with. And I was like, ooh. He said, but the queen can has dominion to move all over the chessboard, hence the operator, and make checking in and making sure things where they're supposed to go. And it's super, super powerful. So it got me thinking, like, oh my gosh, if this isn't my household right now, yeah, I plant the vision, but this all falls apart without my queen. But my queen needs me to actually instill in her the vision and give her the delegation rights to go do the things that are going to take the kingdom to the next level. But I have to develop myself because if I give her a poor vision, if I give her poor direction, then she's going to take that poor vision, that poor direction, and go out and do things that are not in alignment with growing the kingdom. So I'm sitting here just mind blown right now, right? And then he said, kings. Imagine if you guys know the game of chess. Like the king is on the back line with the queen, the bishop, the rooks, knights and things of that nature. And then you have the pawns. And typically, you know, you have pawns who are moving out into, on the chessboard, and you don't feel bad when you lose a pawn, right? You're like, oh, okay, I lost a pawn, right? I had to sacrifice this pawn in order to do some things. But when you lose your strong pieces like your knight and your bishop or your rook, or your queen. Oh my goodness. Like you talk about the pain that you feel in a game when your queen get taken. It's almost like the wind is taken out of your sails. And I was like, that's my life. That's my household. My goodness. Everybody think it's Perry, Perry, Perry. And I'm like, no, it ain't Perry, Perry, Perry. It's my wife, Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. I'm just playing the vision, but she's running the plays. If she were gone, it would take the wind out of my sails and would make running the game and winning the game of chess that much harder by not having my strongest piece on the chessboard. Are y'all following this, y'all? Like, is this resonating with anybody? Geesh. Okay. So he says something. He said, kings have to stop putting themselves in positions on the board to be taken off the board. CEOs. CEO's job is to understand the board, understand how to govern the kingdom, and to delegate. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, my Lord, this is how it all comes together. This is how it comes together. The whole CEO, COO, and CFO of the business is no different than the chessboard, the king and the queen, right? And then obviously, you know what I'm saying, there's no finances being managed on the chessboard, but but when you win the game, right? When you win the game, that is success, right? And when you win the financial game because you have alignment in your roles, you have an alignment in your strengths, you have an alignment in what you consider success, you can go out here and do phenomenal things. All right, y'all. That ends the training today. I hope that blesses somebody. Be sure to like and share this on YouTube. Let this be a blessing to somebody. Make sure you listening to it again. I'm gonna go and listen to it again, and let's continue to move the needle as we are working towards helping 1,000 households become financially free by creating wealth, which is a system that they can transfer, transport, and teach the next generation. And that's how you create generational wealth. All right, y'all. See y'all in the next video. Peace.